Pedro Antunes is the chief economist with the Conference Board of Canada. Pedro, good to see you. Your takeaways of what we're seeing on the markets.
Well, I think we're seeing markets essentially coming to realize that this trade war may be in fact on, and it may be on for a good long time. We're still very hopeful that we'll see some negotiations here happening and some relief on some of those tariffs, especially between the U.S. and some of the other major economies, the EU, Japan, China, et cetera. But it's just looking more and more acrimonious. And that is, I think, very concerning for all of us, and markets are reacting to that.
Yeah, and I'm curious as well. We know that the president hit China, Pedro, with tariffs last Wednesday. There were already 20% tariffs on the Chinese. Then President Trump added another 34% to get you to 54%. And then today he sent out this, and he said, look, if the Chinese don't back down with their retaliatory tariffs, I'm going to slap them with 50% more. And if I'm not mistaken, Pedro, that would be a tariff of about 104% on Chinese imports. I mean, are we looking at a trade war here? Is this what's going on?
Well, this is exactly it, and again, this is just devastating to, well, essentially we have right there the two biggest economies in the world at current exchange rates. The U.S. is still the biggest economy in the world. It accounts for about a quarter, but China's right up there in second place. And you can imagine those two economies over the last 30 years have been developing trade ties, intricate trade ties that have, on the one hand, helped the U.S. consumers, U.S. households gain a lot of purchasing power by, essentially sending production of goods to the most efficient, cheapest place, really. And the Chinese have benefited from bringing millions of people out of poverty, essentially, and creating an economy that's been very, very prosperous over the last 30 years. It's been a win-win. Now, to dismantle that and go the other way is a lose-lose. And this is what we're seeing in between the two world's biggest economies. And of course, that is going to have repercussions for the entire globe, really, including here in Canada. We're already seeing the effects of a global slowdown on commodity prices. That's going to take a bite out of our income. And of course, if the U.S. consumer slows down, U.S. investment slows down, you know how tied we are to that economy with respect to our trade, irregardless of tariffs, right? So this is very, very concerning.
Absolutely. Higher prices, potentially higher inflation, job losses, people's portfolios tanking, certainly right now as they watch this turmoil on the markets. And then, of course, the big fear here, Pedro, I know you're looking at this closely, that Trump will push his own country and the world into a recession.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's essentially the outcome of this. President Trump on that day, Liberation Day, I hate to call it that, but he actually talked about how the U.S. has been suffering over the last 30 years from free trade, but that's absolutely not true. The U.S. has had the most productive economy in the world. It is, in essence, the richest economy in the world of any size, in any case, and it's done terrifically well. Investment is very high, and in fact, a lot of that investment happens because, essentially, big capital is attracted to move money into the U.S. to take advantage and to benefit and to also grow that economy. So to talk about the last 30 years as being, a loss for the U.S., to talk about trade deficits as being some kind of subsidy is just complete nonsense, and it goes against the grain of anything that's sensible here and in terms of what we've seen for the U.S. economy over the past 30 years. If the objective here is to hurt China, then that's a different story, and of course that causes its own pain, and this is what we're seeing with these tariffs. It's just very concerning. Again.
We were showing some of those protests that happened over the U.S. The first big sign that we've seen, as people are now demonstrating, organizing, and protesting against President Trump, not just his economic policies, although those are big, but a lot of other policies as well. I've got one other question. I mean, it seems to me, Pedro, the president, his strategy is the following: he wants companies to come back to the United States. He wants things built in the U.S. He wants supply lane chains, rewired, reoriented toward the United States. But I mean, he's only president for another 3 years, 3.5 years. How realistic is it to think that companies will actually do what he says, close their plants in their home countries, open up new plants in the U.S. and start hiring? I mean, I would assume that takes a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I was of the opinion that this, again, was a strategy more bark than bite. And so not actually implying tariffs, but just talking about tariffs, threatening companies to not have access to U.S. consumer. That on its own had moved investment. Certainly when we renegotiated or prior to renegotiating our NAFTA agreement back in 2016, we saw firsthand some of the angst that caused Canadian businesses. And we did see businesses move their investment, their production south. But to do this on a global scale, that is not going to work. What's going to happen here is the U.S. would end up, especially if you're actually applying the tariffs, the bite of tariffs. What's going to happen? Well, you're going to end up with inflation. You're going to end up with all this uncertainty, including in the U.S. You're going to end up with a recession possibly in the U.S. economy. And I can tell you one thing that does not attract investment is uncertainty and a slowdown in economic activity. That is going to scare investment away. And so this is not going to work, not in the way it's being brought about right now.
Pedro Antunes, which is Chief Economist at the Conference Board of Canada. It's always great to have you part of our coverage here, Pedro. Tap into your insights. Thank you for this today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And just